Commander Zexthal's mandibles clicked in amusement as he watched the bipedal creature struggle against its restraints. The human, such a peculiar name for such a fragile-looking species, hung suspended in the center of the detention cell. Thick titanium alloy chains wrapped around its wrists and ankles. The Korthak had encountered many species during their raids across the galaxy, but none quite as entertaining as these so-called humans. "Look at it squirm," hissed Lieutenant Vaktar, his scaled hide rippling with mirth. The intelligence, reports said they were a warrior species, but this one looks barely capable of lifting its own weight. The human, a female specimen with short brown hair and wearing the tattered remains of what appeared to be a military uniform, had stopped struggling momentarily. Her chest rose and fell in steady rhythm, and her dark eyes surveyed the cell, with an unsettling calm that made Zexthal's tail twitch involuntarily. The entertainment value should last for cycles, Zexthal mused, activating the cell's recording system. The crew grows restless during long voyages. A few sessions of watching this creature attempt escape should provide adequate amusement. The Korthak had been raiding the Outer Rim territories for months, taking prisoners from various worlds to sell in the slave markets of the hegemony. But this human had been different. When they'd attacked her transport vessel, she hadn't cowered or begged like the others. She'd fought, viciously, desperately, taking down 3 of his warriors before they'd managed to subdue her with neural disruptors. Now, suspended in chains that could hold a Rigelian ox, she seemed almost patient. "Commander," came a voice from the intercom, "we've received transmission from the hegemony. They're particularly interested in human specimens. Apparently their psychological resilience makes them valuable for certain specialized work." Zexthal's eyes gleamed. Specialized work meant high prices. "Excellent. How long until we reach—" The sound of metal groaning interrupted his words. Both Korthak turned toward the cell's viewport. The human had positioned herself differently, her legs bent at an unusual angle, her shoulders rotating in a way that seemed to dislocate them from their sockets. The chains, designed to prevent any conventional escape attempt, suddenly seemed inadequate for a species capable of such unnatural flexibility. "Impossible," Vaktar whispered. "Those restraints can hold 5 tons of force." The human's breathing had changed, deeper, more controlled. Her muscles, which had appeared deceptively weak, now stood out in sharp definition as she applied pressure in directions the chains weren't designed to resist. Metal began to warp. "She's dislocating her own joints," Zexthal observed, his amusement evaporating. "Alert security, full containment protocols." But it was too late. With a sound like thunder, the first chain snapped. The human dropped to one knee, her shoulder hanging at an unnatural angle before she rolled it back into place with a wet pop. Her eyes, those dark human eyes, never left the 2 aliens watching her. "Warning! Containment breach in detention. Cell 7. The ship's AI announced in its maddeningly calm tone. The second chain broke as she twisted her other arm free. Then she was standing, rolling her neck as if she'd just woken from a pleasant nap. The ankle restraints proved more challenging, but not by much. She bent herself nearly in half, using her own body weight and leverage to stress the metal beyond its breaking point. "Full security detail to detention level," Zexthal barked into his communicator. "Lock down all—" The human looked up at the viewport and smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Her teeth, small by galactic standards, seemed predatory in that moment. She walked to the cell door, a solid sheet of reinforced duraplast, and placed her hand flat against it. "She can't possibly," Vaktar began. The human struck the door with the heel of her palm. Once, twice. On the 3rd strike, spiderweb, cracks appeared around the impact point. She was using some technique that concentrated all her force into a single point, something the Korthak had never encountered in their centuries of conquest. "The structural integrity is compromised," a technician's voice crackled over the intercom. "She's found a resonance frequency in the duraplast." The door exploded outward in a shower of crystalline fragments. Security personnel came rushing down the corridor, 8 armed Korthak warriors, each twice the human's size and weight. The human evaluated them with the same unsettling calm she'd shown in the cell. The first warrior raised his plasma rifle. He never got the chance to fire. The human moved like liquid lightning, using the broken chains still hanging from her wrists as weapons. She wrapped one around the warrior's neck while using the other to disarm him, then spun with impossible grace to strike 2 more guards with captured weapons. What followed wasn't a battle. It was an exhibition. The human flowed between her opponents like water, never where they expected her to be, always striking at joints, pressure points, and weak spots in their armor that shouldn't have been accessible to someone her size. "How?" Zexthul whispered as he watched his warriors fall. "The intelligence report said humans were physically inferior to most galactic species." "They are," came a new voice from behind him. Both Korthak spun to find another human, male, taller than the female, wearing the insignia of what appeared to be a rescue operation. He stood in the corridor as if he owned the ship, flanked by 2 more humans carrying weapons that definitely weren't standard galactic issue. "Physically, we're weaker than most of you," the human continued conversationally. "Slower than Zatari. Runners, not as strong as Rigelian laborers, can't breathe in as many atmospheres as Danebian traders. But you made one critical error in your assessment." The female had finished with the security team and was now approaching, still trailing broken chains. Her smile had become downright feral. "What error?" Zexthul demanded, though his voice had lost all its earlier confidence. The human male's expression was as cold as deep space. "You assume that because we're physically inferior, we're actually inferior. But humans didn't reach the stars by being the strongest or the fastest. We got there by being the most persistent, the most adaptable, and the most creatively violent species in the galaxy." He gestured to the female. "Lieutenant Sarah Martinez, Terran Marine Corps, specialist in escape and evasion. She's been captured 17 times in her career." His smile matched hers now. "She's escaped 18 times. Zexthul's mandibles clicked nervously. "That's mathematically impossible." "She escaped once before they even finished capturing her," the male explained. "Humans don't stay prisoners. We don't break under torture. We don't submit to slavery. We study, we adapt, and then we come back with friends." As if summoned by his words, the ship shuddered as something docked with their hull. Through the EI viewport, Zexthul could see the sleek lines of a Terran warship, smaller than his vessel, but radiating a menace that made his scales itch. "The chains lasted 53 minutes, Lieutenant Martinez said, checking a timepiece on her wrist. "I'm disappointed. I was aiming for under 45. The human male, his insignia marked him as a captain, stepped forward. "Commander Zexthul, of the Korthak raider Bloodfang, you are hereby charged with piracy, kidnapping, and slavery under Terran Colonial Defense Force regulations. You have the right to surrender immediately." "And if we refuse?" Zexthul managed to ask. The captain's smile never wavered. "Then you'll discover why taking humans prisoner for fun is the last mistake most species ever make." In the distance, the sound of cutting torches echoed through the hull as the rescue team began their work. The Korthak had learned an important lesson about humanity that day, though few would survive to pass it on. Humans don't just escape captivity. They make their captors regret ever thinking it was possible in the first place. The chains hadn't lasted an hour. The Korthak wouldn't last much longer.